now we have a very interesting bit of info about Dhruva's immediate family. So Dhruva gets married. Oh, anyway, here, listen. Yeah, he did his stuff in the forest, and he got his benedictions from Vishnu, and Vishnu said, go, you're going to wind up being the king of Earth for 36,000 years. He goes back, his parents greet him, big fanfare, everybody's so happy, and now the story turns to, what does he do? What's the rest of his life all about? So here we pick up on who he married and what kids he has. So this is another one of these interesting family tree things. I'll just read you the names first. Very interesting how there's no information when you don't know the meaning of the names. And even for the people that know the meaning of the names, you'll have an aha moment when I show you the specific meanings and how they fit together. Anyway, Dhruva marries Brahmi. And Brahmi is the excellent daughter of Prajapati Shishumar. So you remember how we were talking last week about Dhruva, and Vishnu points, oh, maybe I should tell you all this. I resolved the issue of what... there's a comment on last Friday's video that resolves the question. Vishnu is pointing at the north. He's just pointing celestial north. He's saying, you see that point? It's Brajishnu, Dhruvikshati. It means, and Nanyai. What's that other word? Adhistitam. Nanyai Adhistitam. That point up there, nobody else but me controls it. Brajishnu means it belongs to Vishnu. And remember, it can't be Abhijit because he wants a place that's higher than his father, Brahma. So he's actually pointing to, and this shows that the Vedic astronomers had to realize the difference between the North Pole and the North Star. Because the North Pole has a bit of an orbit to it and it moves from the North Stars. So remember, we were talking a lot about what the Dhruva point is, and even why Abhijit. Abhijit is related to the Dhruva point, just like Brahma is related to Vishnu and empowered by Vishnu. Vishnu's first creation. Similarly, Abhijit is like the visible form of Dhruva. The visible form of the North Celestial Pole is the North Star. Similarly, Brahma is like the visible or present form of Vishnu in the world. So here you get this word Shishumar. The father-in-law for Dhruva is Shishumar. I'll tell you what the meanings are later, but it's real interesting if you already know. Dhruva marries Brahmi, who is the daughter of Shishumar. She gives him two sons, Kalpa and Vatsarao. He marries a second wife named Ila. Ila is the daughter of Vayu, and she gives him a girl named Utkala. So those are just names, right? It doesn't really mean anything. It's just a bunch of family, but actually it means a lot of interesting stuff. There's some cosmology here that's quite interesting. So Dhruva is the celestial North Pole. The celestial North Pole is the axis of the Earth. So the Earth is spinning around this, and the part that it spins around is an axis. And when that axis projects into the sky, when you look up in the sky, that projects to make a point, not move in the sky. That point's called Dhruva. Then Brahmi means to move around. So Dhruva marries Brahmi. The point which doesn't move marries the points that do move. So it's like this center of a centrifugal force marries the things that move around to create the centrifugal force. Who is she? she's the Shishumar production. She's the daughter of Shishumar. Shishumar, you'll hear more about it in the 5th division of Bhagavatam. But when you call all the nakshatra, each individual nakshatra has a different shape, which is the basis of why it belongs to a particular god. But all the nakshatras together have a collective shape, which looks like a dolphin. According to the Vedic astronomers, they feel that it looks like a dolphin. So they call it Shishumar. So the word Shishumar refers to the entirety of the 27 nakshatras. So the daughter of the nakshatras is Brahmi. In other words, the nakshatras are the things that move around. They produce the movement. And Dhruva is the point in the middle, the husband of them. Dhruva marries Brahmi, the excellent daughter of Prajapati Shishumar. And then they have 2 kids, Kalpa and Vatsara. Vatsara, you know what it means? Year. This is Vatsara. Oh, I wonder if it's in dual case or if it's in some other grammar that it's not. I didn't memorize. Because it's in dual case, it might mean yugas, of combinations of years, but basically the word means year. So, and Kalpa. Kalpa is a big year. It's a cosmic year. Remember, we were discussing units of time back when we were in the beginning of part 3 of Bhagavatam. Kalpa is this really big unit of time, which is a collection of 4 yugas. So it's about, what's the 4 billion? It's 4,320,000,000 years, Earth years. Makes one Kalpa year. So in other words, the movement of the stars kind of, you could say, the movement of the stars enables the perception of the movement of time. It's movement of things. Time is change. And so movement has to do with time, because movement is the simplest form of change. So the universe, because the universe has these moving things in it, it has a somewhat objective background of time. And the basis for it is, the most basic objective background of time is the way that the nakshatras spin around the Dhruva. In modern terms, that's a day. You get the nakshatras spin around once in a day. But it's not a tropical day. It's a sidereal day. So it's slightly different timing than a tropical day. But the basic Vedic measurement of a day is a sidereal day, where they measure how long it takes the stars to flip around the sky once. Makes sense? It's a very cool family, right? Dhruva marries Brahmi. Brahmi is the movement of Shishumar. Shishumar is Brahmi. So Dhruva, the pole star, let's say, or Dhruva, the north celestial point, marries the movement of the nakshatras, and together they produce years and eons. The measurement of years is simply a collection of the days, right? But also there's, because of the precession of equinoxes, or because of axial precession, the relationship between Dhruva and nakshatra doesn't stay the same. It very slowly changes. This is why sometimes you have Vega as the pole star, and sometimes you have Polaris as the pole star. And there's an orbit between the two. So because the relationship between Dhruva and the nakshatras doesn't exactly stay the same, it allows you to compute very, very, very long, compute or experience very, very long spans of time. And those are called kalpas. Cool family, right? Now he has another wife named Ila, and she's the daughter of Vayu. Vayu is wind. This is also an interesting clarification for Vedic cosmology nuts, geeks, otakus, fans, scholars. Maybe not scholars. Yeah, scholars. This will also be helpful for the scholars. Like a lot of things with popular Veda, Vedic cosmology, when you just turn on YouTube, you'll get a whole bunch of nonsense about it. Flat Earth, all kinds of flat Earth, and like the sun is actually closer than the moon and stuff like that. Who knows what else they're kind of weird ideas they have. One of the weird ideas is that, the other weird idea is that there's only one star. Everything else is a planet. All those other dots of lights are planets. One of the weird ideas is that the wind moves the stars. They read the Puranas and they think it's telling them that the wind is moving the stars around Dhruva. So, oh my God, that's funny, Barna. So this is interesting because it's referencing it. So Vayu is the daughter of Ila. Ila means to flow. And Vayu typically means the wind, right? So Vayu produces a flow, and Vayu's flow makes the stars seem to move. So what it's saying is, well, actually, what we would say for modern observations, what we would say is the movement of the Earth causes the stars to seem to move. So it's actually Vayu. It's not saying that Vayu is making the stars move. It's saying that Vayu has this daughter, has a property named Ila, which is movement. Because Vayu has this property of movement, the stars appear to move. So what they're actually saying, it's not impossible. See, what I don't like is modern people who read ancient things. They come at the ancient things with the attitude of, let's have a good laugh and see how stupid these people were. Let's see how superstitious they were, etc. Which is just a gigantic hubris. Why not come at these things and say, let's investigate this, and with the attitude that the stuff that we realize today is basically the same stuff that they realized yesterday. We're just describing it with a different language. So it's not too difficult to read these passages and see that what they're saying is, actually the stars in the sky don't move around Dhruva. The first wife that he has makes it seem like the stars are moving around Dhruva. The second wife is saying, actually it's not. It's something here local, produced in the local sphere by Vayu, that's creating Ila, or movement here in Vayu's realm. And it's the movement here in the lower space which creates the observation of movement in a higher space. That's what these two wives are depicting, if you ask me. Time change. Dhruva married Brahmi, the excellent daughter of Prajapati Shishumar. Her two sons were... This is interesting stuff for astrology fans the whole time so far, right? So if you came late, make sure you watch the recording because it's fascinating stuff about nakshatras. Dhruva married Brahmi, the excellent daughter of Prajapati Shishumar. Her two sons were Kalpa and Vatsuru. Dhruva means fixed. Brahmi means revolution. She's the daughter of Shishumar, which means the nakshatras. The nakshatras revolve around the pole. As a result of these revolutions, Dhruva is the pole. As a result of these revolutions, we can measure epochs, kalpa, and years, Vatsara. He also married Ila, the daughter of mighty Vayu. Their child was a girl of jewel-like beauty named Utkala. Utkala means carrier. She's the daughter of the wind, his ability to carry and move things. She's the wind's ability to move things. The stars seem to rotate around the pole star because the earth is moved by this force, personified as the daughter of the wind. Okay, that's interesting stuff. Now, changing gears. No more of Dhruva's family tree. Now Dhruva's, what did he do when he's king? Remember, the big incident is that some bad stuff's going to happen to his brother and his mother-in-law. So here it happens. That's the story fast forwards to that point. Dhruva's brother Uttama was unmarried So he was still we were still young, or he hadn't gotten married yet, which is kind of fortunate. Dhruva's brother Uttama was unmarried when a powerful god from the mountains killed him while he was hunting. Kings go and they hunt for two reasons. They have to practice using their weapons, and they have to control the carnivorous population. They don't hunt deer. Weird hunters or disrespectable hunters hunt deer. Respectable hunters hunt lions. And that's what the kings used to do, to keep the forest safe and to keep their skills up. So Dhruva's brother was out hunting in the jungle, in the forest, and all of a sudden he died. And the word came back that it was a forest god, a god from the mountains, a mountain god, a Yaksha. So his mother, actually, they didn't hear that he died, they heard that he was attacked. So his mother, Suruchi, went mad, because what's she going to do anyway against the forest god? But she went out to try to find him, and then it says she met a similar fate. Okay, so probably she also got killed by a Yaksha. Who are these Yakshas? You'll find out. You may already know if you really were paying attention to the whole Bhagavatam, but it's pretty hard. But you'll find out now who these Yakshas are. For now, they're these mountain gods. When Dhruva heard that his brother had been killed, interesting, maybe his mother too, brother and mother, but it just says brother, he gave himself up completely to revengeful anger and grief. So he lost his mind also. And he did not try to control his anger or grief at all. He just let it flow. So he got on his chariot and went to the realm of those gods. He went to the mountain where those gods dwell, which, by the way, is Tibet. And that's why there's all these Yeti stories and all that kind of stuff. There's just all this far out stuff in Tibet. King Dhruva went to the north, into the land of Rudra's followers. There's your Tibet. There, in a snowy Himalayan valley, he saw a city full of mysterious beings. So he found the city where these Yakshas were living. And when he found it, he blew mightily on his conch shell, filling all directions with its roar. So he didn't try to guerrilla warfare or anything. He found the city, and he went right in front of it, and he blew in his big, gigantic conch shell. The mysterious sub-gods in the city were alarmed and shocked, angered by the conscious declaration of threat. The sub-gods came out from their city in armies, armed with weapons and prepared for war. So they were shocked. Who comes to our city in the mountain, first of all? We live in the middle of the snowy Himalayas so that all these stinky humans stay away from us. That's probably why they killed Dhruva's brother, because he wandered too close to their city. Now this stinky human comes up to our gates and doesn't even try to run away, and blows a conch shell challenging us to fight. So they're shocked, all kinds of feelings, shocked, confused, angry. And they say, well, let's show you guys not to do this again. Let's show people that you better not do this. So they just grabbed all their weapons and assembled armies and ran out to greet Dhruva alone. Dhruva with his chariot driver. Dhruva was an excellent warrior and a fierce bowman, so he began killing them, shooting each one with 3 simultaneous arrows. So there's all kinds of, in Japanese we say jutsus. So, and in the modern animes, they're so awesome. You're in Mizu, Kami, Jutsu. Well, in the Vedic stories, it's the same. So the warriors are not really, The warriors of the Vedic time are like magical warriors. They don't just fight with physical force. Their command of martial arts is so great that it's like magic, and in some cases they actually employ magic. So there's this one kind of magic where you can split your arrow into three. And Dhruva was doing that. He would shoot an arrow, it would split into three and kill three gods at a time. They're called sub-gods. Seeing these arrows marked straight and sure for their foreheads, that's cool. He shot them through the forehead. It's pretty hard to get an arrow through there. His arrows must have been really strong. They knew they were doomed and thought highly of Dhruva's skill. It was so interesting. They're very ferocious. Warlike. They're very ferocious. The Yakshas are not skittish. Yakshas are not skittish about blood or fighting or anything. So when they saw Dhruva killing them, they actually thought highly of him, like, wow, this guy can kill us? Respect. So, feeling trampled like serpents, they struck back at him, each one shooting 6 simultaneous arrows. So they said, oh, wow, look at this human. You can shoot 3 arrows. Let's show him what we can do. So what they could do is they can shoot 6. But there's a whole bunch of them, so Dhruva had like hundreds of arrows coming at him. Then they did the same trick with all of their weapons. They started throwing all these other kinds of weapons besides arrows. They loosened 13 10,000s. 13 10,000s, 130,000. 13 10,000s of clubs, blades, spears, lances, pikes, and other weapons, like arrows with amazing feathers. They ferociously wanted to drench him, his charioteer, in a downpour of death. So you can imagine, this again, anime is really, really similar to, you can imagine, but like just thousands of arrows and clubs and swords and everything's flying at Dhruva. Drenching his chariot, it says Dhruva, Uttanapada's son, could not even be seen in that incessant shower of weapons, like a mountain hidden by incessant storms. Like sometimes the clouds, you can't see the mountain. Same way, all these weapons flying at Dhruva, you couldn't even see where he was. The Siddha gods had gathered in the heavens to see what was going on. And they began to cry, no, no, when Manu's grandson disappeared like the sun setting into the ocean. So when all this, it's just like an incredible onslaught of weapons, just eclipsing Dhruva and obscuring him. All the gods just say, that's the end of him. This is terrible. The gods shouted in victory. The Yakshas shouted in victory. Yeah! But then, from amidst all their destruction, Dhruva's chariot charged forward like the sun bursting through the midst. They tried to attack him again, but the twang of his bow routed their confidence, and his arrows destroyed their weapons. So what he had done was destroy the weapons with his arrows. This is some serious martial arts. They tried to attack him again, but the twang of his bow had routed their confidence, and his arrows had destroyed their weapons like the wind destroys clouds. So the clouds around the mountain, and then the wind destroys the clouds. And the sun seemed to sink into the sea, but then all of a sudden the sun came rising out of the sea. Those arrows pierced their armor and viciously stabbed the bodies of those Raksha gods, like thunderbolts smashing into mountains. The battlefield and it's just Dhruva. It's just Dhruva fighting an army of demigods. The battlefield overflowed with rent and torn bodies, heads with precious earrings, legs like golden palm trunks, arms with fancy bracelets, very valuable necklaces, armlets, crowns, and turbans, which had delighted the heroes who wore them, were now strewn everywhere. The Rakshas soldiers who somehow survived the onslaught of the greatest Kshatriya fled from the battlefield almost dead, like wounded elephants fleeing from a victorious lion. All of them fled into the city and left the vast battlefield without warriors. So Dhruva scared them all away. They had to run. Didn't just scare them, I mean, they literally had to flee. The supreme human, Dhruva, wanted to chase his enemies into their city. So his chariot driver said, should we follow them? No, Dhruva explained. He wants to chase them, but he realizes, no, that we better not chase them. He says, who knows what plans those magicians might have laid? They must have set some trap. So he just waited outside. Soon there was a deep rumbling like the sound of the ocean. And a dust storm closed in from all directions. The whole sky was instantly consumed in masses of black clouds, bristling with constant blinding lightning and terrifying thunder. A downpour of blood poured from the clouds, mixed with mucus, pus, stool, urine, and bone marrow. Severed trunks of human bodies then began to fall in front of Dhruva. So he's getting attacked by a storm now. The Yakshas have summoned a storm. So first it's just these clouds come in, and then these lightning bolts start going off. Then it starts to rain first blood, then more and more and more heavy organic material, pus, piss, stool, bone marrow, and then parts of bodies start falling out of the sky. So that will certainly scare you, won't it? A mountainous craft materialized in the sky. Now you get a spaceship in the story, or an aircraft. This might be the first time in this Purana that you hear about the Vimana, or the airship. No, because Kapila's mother, Devahuti, and his father, Kardama, they made an airship city. So you've heard about this before. But they made this, the Yakshas, they made this huge airship in the sky. And it was shooting missiles everywhere. It was shooting clubs, hammers, swords, maces, and a rain of shrapnel. So now it gets really dangerous. In the middle of this storm, here comes this big gigantic ship just bombarding Dhruva with bullets, of all kinds of bullets. Snakes with lightning in their breath and fire in their vomit rushed towards him with ferocious eyes. So now you get dragons coming towards him. Herds of enraged elephants, lions, and tigers stampeded towards him. Tidal waves came forth, flooding all the earth with horrible noise like the terrifying end of time. But Dhruva knew that all these countless horrifying things were just visions, just demonic illusions cast by magicians to terrify the weak-hearted. So he was undaunted. He knew this is just magic. This isn't, this stuff is not actually even real. It's only as real as I think it is. So he countered their magic by being very Capricornian. Understanding that the demons had cast their very powerful magic on Dhruva, the sages hurried to give him advice. "O son of Uttanapad," they said, "the all-attractive divine who carries the Sharang bow destroys the distress of his devotee and annihilates the devotee's opponents. Dear, anyone who utters or even hears his medicinal name instantly and effortlessly crosses beyond the reach of death." So the gods said, you have to counter magic this stuff. You can't just tolerate it forever. You'll get overwhelmed by it at some point. It's going to keep getting more and more intense. Counter this magic. Use your type of magic. You're a bhakta. Call upon Vishnu. Call Vishnu's name. Vishnu's name can be invoked to counter any evil magic. You'll find this in Indian villages, etc., etc. And it works from personal experience. You can get rid of ghosts, etc., by just saying Hari or Krishna, or Hare Krishna or something. It gets rid of, it scares off the mental monsters very easily. So that's what they advise him to do. Come on, cast your own spell. Call upon the name of Vishnu. Do something with Vishnu magic. So now, we actually switch to the next chapter now, but I'll give you a few minutes of this. And then, okay, 2 more paragraphs. When the bowman Dhruva heard the sage's advice, by the way, bowmen are the most sophisticated warriors. To use the bow is the most sophisticated. The magic that you can use with the bow and the different kind of arts you can use with the bow, it's the most powerful, but it's the most difficult to master. So Dhruva is called a bowman. Arjuna, of all the Pandavas, was the most excellent martial artist. His weapon was a bow. You can use hammers, clubs, etc. when you're a warrior, but those who can use a bow are the most intelligent. When the bowman Dhruva heard the sage's advice, he purified himself with drops of water and invoked the Narayan arrow upon his bow. So he says, I'll use a Vishnu missile. I'll use a Vishnu arrow, Narayan arrow, to get rid of all this, to dispel all this magic. As soon as it appeared, that weapon dispelled all the magic cast by the mysterious foe, just as the dawn of knowledge dispels the illusion of suffering. That arrow was pure gold, and its feathers were those of a great swan. When it leapt from the bow, it became a multitude of arrows, piercing the enemy ranks with terrible noise, like flocks of peacocks flying into the forest. Persecuted by the razor-sharp arrows falling everywhere, those gods became enraged. It's like a video game. Persecuted by the razor-sharp arrows falling everywhere, those gods became enraged and charged towards the bowmen with their weapons held high like serpents raising their hoods to attack Garuda. But as they rushed towards him, the arrows pierced their arms, legs, necks, and guts, delivering them to the paramount locus beyond the realm of the sun, which the celibates attain. So that's the end for today. I'll tell you why. But just in summary, Dhruva finds out that a Yaksha killed his brother and probably his mother-in-law, stepmother. So he loses his self-control and just decides that he's going to get revenge. He's going to teach them not to do this. So he rides up to he finds their city in the mountains, which I'm telling you probably is Nepal, somewhere in Nepal. And he challenges them by blowing his conch in front of their city. They come rushing out to greet him, and he messes them up, to their surprise. He starts by shooting them with a triple arrow. They try to fire 6 arrows back, and then they start showering him with weapons. He destroys all the weapons with his arrows and then emerges from out of their hail of weapons and starts blasting them all to bits. And so they all run back into their city. He decides not to follow them into the city because he knows he's going to get swamped if he goes inside the city. He waits for them to come back out. Instead of them coming back out, they use magic. So the magic is that they create this they start to use the forces of nature, because these are Yakshas. That's their specialty. The Yakshas are the protectors of nature. That's why they don't like humans. So they start to use the forces of nature. They could call up storms, and they have tidal waves, and they have animals coming at Garuda and dragons and all kinds of terrible stuff. Dhruva realizes this is all just in my mind. And the gods say, why don't you just dispel this by using Vishnu magic? So he creates a Narayana arrow, which is this golden arrow with swan feathers that goes up in the sky and spreads into 1 billion arrows and dispels all the magic instantly and destroys all the Yakshas. And they lose their self-control too, and they're just like, we have to kill this guy, it's now or never. So they throw everything into it, but they all just die as they try to come towards him. And that's a summary of the battle. Now, guess what happens next? Dhruva gets in a lot of trouble. He's going to get in trouble from his grandpa. His grandpa Manu is going to get really upset. He gets really upset with him. He hears about what's going on, and he gets upset, and he's going to come. he comes to the battlefield and he gives Dhruva a pretty stern lecture. So that's what we'll look at tomorrow. Yakshas and Rakshas are basically the same. The celibates, the celibates are the yogis, the extreme yogis. They can achieve Brahman, or some very high locus in the material world. So, because they were killed by Narayan arrow, and because they were killed by Dhruva, they get that special thing of having died with their mind affected by Vishnu in some way. So that can lead either to a very great next birth or even to liberation. Yeah, co-mother. They don't call them stepmothers, they call them co-mother. Okay, so let's hear what Manu has to say to Tanapad. His first sentence is, "It's enough, child." That's what he says to Dhruva. Okay, so meet me again tomorrow and we'll continue with the story. Thank you very much. Really, thanks so much for coming in. And sorry about the time change. We don't change time in Japan. So this is an hour earlier than usual for you. So is that kind of better than usual or worse than usual? Tell me right now real fast. Is this time change kind of in your favor or against your favor? Pardo, I didn't know you're Asian. Okay, good. Some is for, some is against. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. You know, martial art is a very interesting thing to do. I actually feel like most sadhus and scholars should actually learn it. Actually, basically, a scholar should at least know a bit about any science, like sewing, cooking, like anything, any art. You should have at least not be a novice. So learning it was I studied it for a while. It's really good, and then you can appreciate these chatriyas a lot more too, and what they're actually doing. Okay, guys, see you tomorrow.